Music swells, then fades into a festive melody before settling into a haunting, atmospheric underscore. In the heart of a city draped in the gray of early winter, there lived a man whose very name was synonymous with misery and greed, Ebenezer Scrooge. His visage was etched with sour lines, his countenance perpetually shrouded in a cloud of discontent. He moved through the world like a shadow, offering nary a kind word, nor a spark of warmth, to any soul unfortunate enough to cross his path. On this particular Christmas Eve, as carols drifted faintly through frost-kissed streets and the air hummed with the promise of joy, Scrooge was ensconced in his cold, stark counting-house, a fortress of solitude. Music softens, punctuated by the clink of coins. He was so utterly consumed by avarice that, rather than joining in the seasonal merriment, he sat hunched over a mound of gold and silver coins, meticulously recounting his vast fortune, even as his meager clerk, the gentle Bob Cratchit, toiled away in the icy chamber nearby. Bob, whose spirit remained unquenchable despite his meager wage and biting boss, ventured a hopeful request. "Sir," he began, his voice barely a whisper, "may I go home early today? The children are expecting me." Music swells slightly with impatience. "Early?" Scrooge snarled, his eyes narrowing like those of a trapped alley cat. "Sit down and work. There's much more yet to be done." "Bah! You expect me to idle my profits on such a busy night for your family needs? No way." The dismissal hung heavy in the frozen air. Music dips, then swells again with a jaunty, hopeful tune, before abruptly cutting off. Later that evening, just as a sliver of hope seemed to pierce Scrooge's hardened shell, his nephew, Fred, burst into the counting-house, radiating infectious cheer. "Uncle Scrooge," he called, his voice ringing with genuine affection. "Merry Christmas! I come to invite you to Christmas dinner at my place. A small gathering, nothing fancy, but there'll be company and laughter. Do come." Music shifts to a somber, pleading tone. Scrooge looked upon his nephew with a mixture of disgust and pity. "Fancy your inviting me?" he retorted, his voice dripping with scorn. "Mankind should be bludgeoned and boiled. What relation have you to the wretched day? Keep it to yourself. As for dinner, good night." Music changes to a brisk, formal rhythm. Just as Fred's hopeful echo faded, two gentlemen, dressed in the sober attire of philanthropy, appeared at Scrooge's imposing door. They had come on behalf of charity, seeking a modest contribution to alleviate the suffering of the poor during the festive season. "We only wish to collect a little from those who have much," one explained politely. Music pauses, then resumes with Scrooge's signature dismissive sound. But all the grumpy, miserly Scrooge could muster in response was a curt, cutting dismissal. "Are there no prisons?" he snapped. "Are there no workhouses?" His words were like ice shards. "Bah humbug," he added, the phrase becoming his chilling signature. Music fades completely, replaced by the sound of Scrooge's heavy breathing and the clink of coins, then a soft, otherworldly hum. That night, as Scrooge finally succumbed to exhaustion, slumped over his ledgers in his cold bedchamber, the house seemed to hold its breath. He fell asleep, alone, his thoughts consumed by figures and finances. But sleep did not bring rest. Instead, a spectral presence filled the room, bathed in the soft, ethereal glow of fading embers. Music grows ethereal, wistful. It was the ghost of Christmas past, an apparition shrouded in a hooded gown, whose face was a shifting blur of light and shadow. The ghost gently reached out, and Scrooge found himself transported, not through time, but back into the very marrow of his own memories. Music becomes melancholic, like a lonely child's song. First, he saw himself as a lonely boy, abandoned at a boarding school during the holidays while his classmates went home to warmth and family. He sat by a single, flickering candle, his youthful face etched with a sorrow that mirrored his current misery. Then, the scene shifted again, to a frosted, candlelit room where his fiancée, Belle, stood before him, her eyes filled with a mixture of love and sorrow. "You care for nothing but gold," she whispered, her voice heavy with heartbreak. "Another idol has displaced me. That idol is your money. I have seen today that you love it more than you love me." With a heavy heart, she turned and left him, the door closing not just on their relationship, but on a part of Scrooge's own soul. Music becomes tense, Scrooge's voice filled with distress. "Stop showing me this!" Scrooge cried out, a raw pain cracking his usual monotone. "Enough!" The spectral figure faded, and Scrooge found himself back in his cold bed, the memory still stinging like a fresh wound. Music transforms into a warm, bustling, cheerful melody. But the night was not yet done. A new presence filled the room, this one radiating warmth and life. It was the ghost of Christmas Present, a giant figure draped in a vibrant green robe, his face beaming with mirth and generosity. He chuckled, a sound like 1,000 bells, and beckoned Scrooge to follow. Music shifts to depict a cozy, impoverished home. The ghost led Scrooge through the air to the modest dwelling of Bob Cratchit. Inside, despite their obvious poverty, thin clothes, meager portions, the small family was gathered around a tiny, smoldering fire. Tiny Tim, Bob's youngest son, who used a crutch to navigate the worn floorboards, sat beaming at his family. Laughter and love filled the small space. They sang, they shared what little they had with genuine joy. Music takes on a questioning, almost disbelieving tone. "How can they be happy when they don't have money?" Scrooge muttered, his voice thick with disbelief. The ghost merely smiled, a knowing, gentle smile that seemed to say, "Money cannot buy everything." Music shifts to a lively, festive party atmosphere. Next, the ghost transported Scrooge to his nephew Fred's Christmas party. Laughter echoed, glasses clinked, and merry conversation filled the air. Fred looked around, his face alight with happiness. "Merry Christmas, everyone," he exclaimed. "Oh, if only Uncle Scrooge were here with us. We'd welcome him, spite of himself." Seeing the genuine love and camaraderie, a strange, unfamiliar warmth began to stir within Scrooge's frozen heart, though he quickly tried to suppress it. Music fades, leaving only a sense of finality and dread. Scrooge returned to his bed, the warmth of the Cratchits and his nephew replaced by a growing unease. The final visitor awaited him, a figure dressed entirely in black, silent and forbidding, the ghost of Christmas yet to come. Music becomes chilling, ominous, almost silent except for whispers. This ghost led Scrooge to a dimly lit, eerily silent street. A funeral procession was passing by. People milled about, their faces expressions of indifference, even relief. Scrooge heard snippets of conversation carried on the cold wind. "That old greedy man died," one person grumbled. "Me too," another chimed in, "he's so unforgiving." "I'm so happy." Music stops abruptly, replaced by a single, sharp sound. "Who is this dead man?" Scrooge demanded, his voice trembling. The ghost did not answer, but led him onward, not to the funeral, but to the bleak expanse of a graveyard. Together, they stood before a freshly dug grave. Scrooge hesitated, Then, with a mounting dread that chilled him more than any December wind, he reached out and read the inscription on the headstone. Eerie silence, then a gasp. Ebenezer Scrooge. Music swells with horror and desperation, then cuts off abruptly. A wave of pure terror washed over him. The life of isolation, the endless counting of coins, the cruelty, it was his own future, his inevitable end, and it was met with universal scorn and joy. "No!" Scrooge cried out, his voice raw with desperation. "Please! Give me a chance! Give me a chance to change!" Silence, then the faint sound of a clock chiming. In an instant, Scrooge was back in his bed, the spectral figures gone. The same cold room, the same leaden silence. But something had shifted. The clock chimed once. It was Christmas morning. Music swells with sudden joy and hope. A profound sense of relief and exhilaration flooded Scrooge. He could change. He would change. He leaped from his bed, his whole being alight with a newfound purpose. He rushed out into the hallway, calling for the boy he'd seen earlier. "Boy," he shouted. "Quick! Go to the poulterer's and buy the biggest turkey you can find. The one hanging high. And have it sent immediately to the Cratchit residence." Music becomes festive and energetic. With that accomplished, his spirits soared even higher. He donned his hat and coat, his step light and quick, and made his way through the now brightening streets to his nephew Fred's house. He arrived just as the party was concluding, and to the surprise and delight of all, joined in the festivities with genuine enthusiasm, laughter, and warmth. Music becomes warm, gentle, and enduring. Scrooge was never the same man again. The miserly, mean-spirited Ebenezer vanished, replaced by a generous, kind-hearted gentleman. He raised Bob Cratchit's salary, became like a second father to Tiny Tim, who, with better care, lived a full life, and faithfully attended his nephew's gatherings each year. He spent the rest of his life giving back to the poor, supporting charities with open hands, and treating every person he met with kindness, respect, and genuine warmth. The story of his transformation became a legend, a timeless reminder that even the coldest heart can be melted by the spirit of Christmas, and that it is never too late to embrace the joy of giving and connection.